Today, all over the Christian world, they're celebrating the feast of the Epiphany, and I want to sort of work with that today. Uh, it was the word itself, Epiphanos in Greek, means the ability to see through the surface of things to the transcendent underneath it. Okay, and in the Gospel of Matthew, they have the three wise men from the east uh, finally journeying and coming upon Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, probably living in a cave or out under just some makeshift thing. They were really homeless. They were refugees. They didn't even have a room. And it took somebody from a wisdom view. These were the magi. Really, magus is a wise person, and magi is the plural. It means three wise people. Well, what did that mean? Didn't mean they had learned a lot. To me, you got to interpret that little bit of scripture that we're told about them. You have to interpret it in terms of not literally, but symbolically. These are people with a wisdom, contemplative operating system that came, and only somebody from that view could recognize that this poor couple, without funds, without a roof, really, that there was divinity there. It's the ability to see the divinity beneath the physical. And that's why I really liked the opening screensaver. I'm going to put it on for you guys in case you came in late, because I think it's a remarkable icon. It was used in a meditation chapel, kind of virtual meditation thing for a period of what they call Visio Divina. Lectio Divina means reading sacred text. Visio Divina means seeing, usually using with an icon, a picture to concentrate on it, to actually look at it and look through it. Yeah, this is an amazing picture of divinity here. Very might be startling for people, but to see a single mother with a child, no father there, and also for them to be essentially naked, and for a real wake-up call for most Western cultures to be Black, to be able to see the divinity, to see the sacredness of this mother and child. I think it's a brilliant icon of how we're going to have to learn to see the world. But again, some people might be offended if you're looking at it from a lesser point of view, or we'll sort of unpack that a little bit. But I just think it's a brilliant icon. We could spend the rest of the time just gazing at it and gazing through it to something deeper, I think. So, change happens. All of a sudden, we were in COVID. We had the kind of audio Divina on, for those of you who came early enough to hear the audio plus have the icon. The audio was, most of it was the Neville brothers from down in New Orleans singing, and then Aretha at the end, Aretha Franklin singing. And change is going to come. Change happens all the time. What she's really talking about, I mean, just to listen to that when you're really low, if you can dial up Change is going to come by Aretha, and listen to it. It'll pick your spirits up. I don't care how dark things are. She says, I'm born by the river in a little shack. Well, that's just exactly like what was going on with Jesus and Mary and Joseph. They probably didn't even have a shack, might have been a cave. Change happens, but transformation is another story. That icon is for transformation. The people who are coming week after week, and some of you for consistently for 22 months, I'm betting you're longing for transformation. We got plenty of change. Shit happens, as they say, and change happens, and sometimes it's not great. Sometimes it's sort of shitty, but change happens. But transformation is different. Transformation is what you do with the change, and it's been something beautiful what we've done with the pandemic so far here. Transformation is always a process, first of all, letting go. And for a while, maybe a long while, living in a kind of confused, shadowy space, which would be a good description of the pandemic, a confused, shadowy space. You never quite know what's going on. And if you look at the biblical image of Jonah swallowed by the whale, that's always been a biblical image of transformation. Eventually, if you're willing to let go, if you're willing to live in a kind of shadowy, confusing place, then at some point you'll be spit out onto a beach in a totally unexpected shore. And that goes for just having doing contemplation, trying to live a contemplative life in this world. Remember, this is not an otherworldly thing when we do spirituality. God comes to you disguised as your life. So this is always about your life. This is about learning how to live a contemplative life. God comes to you disguised as your own life. Paula Darcy, one of Richard Rohr's pals, said that one time. I've never forgot it, and I heard it on the tape. God comes to you disguised as your own life. Well, the Epiphany was about being able to see through the disguise. We talk about a blessing in disguise. Mostly, if you don't have a contemplative operating system, which actually resonates with what you see with the heart rather than so much with the brain, an adult operating system, and then there's we start with a childhood operating system. If we're lucky, we actually upgrade to an adult operating system, which still sees things sort of dualistically, but has more space to it. Childhood operating system is just about me surviving. Me. It has to be, to get us through that early childhood stuff. But then something happens, luckily, and you usually, some kind of initiation experience, might just be failure or whatever. But all of a sudden, you can upgrade into an adult operating system where you actually think about more than me. And then there's us. Maybe you can start to care for other people. All right. But it's still dualistic. You just still see difference. There's higher and lower. There's my people and those people, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the kind of operating system that these wise men are representing is a contemplative operating system, a non-dual operating system. And they're saying with the eye of the heart now. The heart doesn't see true. It doesn't see better or worse. It doesn't pick, oh yeah, those guys live, those guys die. The heart doesn't work that way. The eye of the heart resonates with life. It works on a kind of resonance. They just knew, based, contrary to all, they were expecting to find a king, and they did find a king, just as you are a king or queen, and I'm a king or queen. But they recognized it in this. They didn't get caught in the surface of things. Guys living in a stable, manure, they could see through that. This is actually, this story is, the Epiphany is really the end of Christmas. Christmas season goes from the day of the birth, technically for 12 days, and then the Magi show up, and then they reveal what's really going on here. Maybe Mary and Joseph are the most surprised people on the planet, in some level, that this is a king. I mean, Mary and Joseph had, you had the angel, you had dreams for Joseph, whatever. Yeah, but do you really believe this? That this is going to be, that this is a divine here? See, in Eastern Orthodox Christianity, they call this the theophany, not just the epiphany. They call it the theophany. In other words, the seeing through the surface of ordinary reality to see the divinity in everything. I look at 25 of you here, and I'm seeing 25 different images of the divinity. Hopefully you're seeing it the same way at some point. And that's epistemology. Epistemology is, it looks into how you know things. And in the way I'm looking at it, how you see. Here's 7 words on epistemology. It's really all you need to know to live a contemplative life. How you see is what you see. How you see is what you see. And when you have a contemplative operating system that's actually running from the eyes of the heart, if that's how you're seeing, you'll see the world totally different. You can see the world as a huge mess right now, and on one level it really is. All sorts of things falling apart, but much suffering. But a guy like Rumi, who lived in a wild time, the time of the Crusades and all this kind of warfare and nonsense, he said most people see this universe as a kind of suffering, as a kind of sorrowful place. Rumi, who had transformed into having a non-dual operating system, he saw the universe is primarily graceful, full of grace. That it wasn't blotting out all the suffering and all the misery, no, but he was just saying that this is primarily, we're being showered with grace all the time, given, second chances, 2 million chances to turn our lives around, to be a conduit for this grace. You see, he saw it as primarily graceful. How you see is what you see. And these men, if they were men, who knows, it's, again, we don't know literally what happened to most of this stuff, but we know what these writers are trying to say symbolically. They could see the divine in this poor a little child born into poverty, born by the river in a little shack. They could see it. Can we see it? Does our culture see it? Yeah, because, that's the test. This little poem that I wrote, I've been working on organizing and proofing and getting ready for publication to my next book of poems. And this was the last poem in, because I wrote it this week, meditating on the Epiphany. So this will be in the new book of poem, which I hope will be actually printed in a month or two, in which case I'll send you all a copy. So you have 50 poems, but this was the 50th one in. It's just called the Epiphany. The Epiphany, this seeing through. And it's very short, but I think it packs a lot. The thought that some lives are more important than others. The thought that some lives are more important than others is the viral idea that is the root cause of most of the misery on this planet. The thought that some lives are more important than others is the viral idea that is the root cause of most of misery on this planet. Let that sink in. I think, we could have discussions about politics, about social justice, environmental justice, gender. You could talk about all of that. But really, there's this viral idea that got into humanity, and it's in all cultures. And we gotta, if you're going to beat a virus, you have to identify it. And I think this is the viral idea. Some people, some lives are more important than others. Think about that. It's the way we're living, at least in this country and for much of the world. I mean, that's why 3% of Africa is vaccinated. Besides the fact that if you're going to beat a pandemic, you have to vaccinate the world. So it's a bad strategy from that. But some lives, even in this country, some people have health care, other people, this is really the viral idea. And so this is a real epiphany. First person to ever actually tip me off to this was Paul Farmer, a guy who worked tirelessly setting up a healthcare system in Haiti. He felt, he said, these people deserve world-class healthcare. I mean, it was like out on a limb for a long time. It still is. The poorest people in your community deserve world-class healthcare. We could give it to them if we thought that one life was as important as the other, that we're all equally important. Think of, Jesus, he's teaching the golden rule in Matthew, the seventh chapter. The golden rule is treat others as you would like them to treat you. One of the, the great commandments, which wasn't a commandment, he said, love your neighbor as yourself, which doesn't mean, it means because your neighbor is equally important, equally divine. Has the God seed in them, the Buddha nature in them, and they could, will they get a chance to actually transform into that? Or, it's hard to transform into the Buddha or into God if you, die from malnutrition or lack of, So this is what we're dealing with, just to say everybody deserves world-class education. Everybody, and we could do it. We should at least aspire to it. And that would have to change this idea. Yeah, I guarantee if I showed that icon to a lot of other people in a lot of other churches, they would be upset, scandalized even. This group is ready to transform in that direction. Now, right after he teaches the golden rule, treat others as you would like them to treat you, he follows up with this teaching, which leads us to contemplation. He says, his very next teaching, right on the heels of it. That's why I think Jesus was a really hard guy to handle, because, treat everybody as you would want them to treat you. And then he says, it's a narrow gate and a hard road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Listen to that again. That's one of his harder teachings. He says it's a narrow gate and a hard road that leads to life. He came to give us life and to feel it in abundance, to be overflowing with this thing called life. He says, but it's a narrow gate and a hard road that leads there, and only a few find it. Well, there's 30 of us here. There's not a mega church. I'm not sure how many people. I hope everybody finds this narrow gate, but there's a reason there's only 30 people here and not 3,000. A mega church, because to come actually do what we're about to do next, which is to sit and let go of all your plans, let go of all your ideas, let go of trying to figure out life. That's the narrow gate, contemplation, and just to, in a way, relax, let go, and let the transcendent do the work. There's a lot of that's a narrow and a hard road. It's very hard for people to let go of their own thinking, even for 20 minutes, like we're doing. You see, that's what Jesus was talking about. Only a few will find it. But then, on top of that, then you get the next teaching, which he talks about the kingdom of heaven is like dough that you put. It's like the leaven that you put in the dough, which is an insane metaphor for their society because yeast or leaven, wild. So I could just see these guys scratching their head trying to figure out, because he was turning everything upside down, which you have to do in a way to shock people out of this, higher and lower kind of thinking, us and them, this and that. And he's talking about, he never, he had 12 followers on Twitter. That wasn't, it didn't have millions. He had these 12 people who may sort of got it, eventually. And but he believed in this leaven. He believed in the mustard seed. And I believe that 30 people doing this kind of work can change the world. It's the only thing that will change the world. Transform people are the only thing that's going to transform other people. Facts obviously don't work. Information isn't doing so well. But you transform yourself, and then you have this effect. I mean, this is like square one work, but it's the ground level. This is the grassroots. Transform yourself, and then you will transform other people. I do believe in that, and Jesus did too. Buddha believed in that too. These guys didn't advertise. I don't advertise. 12-step group that people don't advertise. They just know eventually people are looking to live. They'll show up. You showed up. So think about that. Okay. I think that's enough. So we're going to go through the narrow gate now. So the narrow gate is, nose, the mouth, the breath. Okay. That's connected with the narrow gate. You guys who show up on the 15th for the Saturday morning retreat, the Dancing of Spirit, we're going to be working with just this area, the breath, and in a context that I call the wheel of life. It's going to be very good. So do try to do. You don't need any money to get in. Just sign up. Okay. All right. So let's do some breathing now, and to lead us into our contemplation.